Will Pranab Mukherjee be able to deliver, or will politics paralyze policy yet again? Will he be able to manage the fiscal mathematics, especially at a time when revenues are slipping and expenditure is headed only northbound? Will he be able to fix the fiscal deficit, and can divestment truly take off? The big question then, Budget 2012, will it be a non-event or will it be a game changer both for corporate India and more importantly for the Indian economy? This is Budget for Renewal, and with me on the show we have Swaminathan Iyer, consulting editor of the Economic Times, Bimal Jalan, former governor of the RBI, and of course Shankar Acharya, honorary professor at the ICRIER and a former advisor to the Finance Ministry. Let's begin the discussion with you, Swami, because you've covered so many budgets and written so extensively on all of these. The big question really is that the world is watching India and its biggest fiscal exercise. Pranab Mukherjee is in a bit of a spot. His government is on a back foot. Growth has plummeted. Inflation management for the government did fail to a certain extent. The big question then is, can Pranab Mukherjee will he be able to deliver on the 16th of March? And more importantly, can Budget 2012 be a game changer according to you?
I think it can only have a limited impact at best. The problems that we have regarding the encouragement of investment are much bigger than what the budget alone can do. On the one hand, there are the various global issues. I mean, I do hope the price of oil doesn't keep rising as it's rising right now. I do hope we don't get a fresh European crisis, the two big risks from abroad. But even domestically, I mean, if we have a kind of paralysis in New Delhi because Mamata Banerjee is endangering the life of this government, that cannot be fixed by a budget speech. If we have a situation where coal is not being produced for a variety of reasons because clearances are not there, that cannot be fixed by the budget. If we have a situation where there are various power plants not getting gas, other power plants saying we cannot start functioning until you revise the tariffs. I mean, none of these very, very big issues is within the control of Pranab. He can do a very limited amount. If, for instance, he is able to show some dramatic improvement in the fiscal deficit, I am sure that will go down well, especially with foreign investors. If he can say something like we are going to go ahead with 49% foreign equity in airlines, something on private banks, private sector banks, more license to be given. I mean, those kind of statements, I think, can energize investment, can improve the sentiment, but only to a limited extent.
That's a fair point. Statements of intent will perhaps boost sentiment, and so much needs to be done outside of the budget. But Dr. Bimal Jalan, let's come to you and ask you this very valid question, that in the last 12 months, UP really has been on the back foot for the many reasons that we will discuss later on in this show. But the big question then is, can this budget propel growth, and can it really and realistically put economic agenda back on track?
Oh, there is no doubt. I mean, the budget is meant to do all that in policy terms, to lay out the plans for the next year. And we are fortunate to have a very good finance minister in office, and I'm sure he would receive all the support of the leading leaders in his party for doing what needs to be done.
All right, good to listen to optimists like you. But Dr. Shankar Acharya, welcome to the show, and let's ask you the question. Will this be Pranab Mukherjee's last chance, and do you think he has the risk of losing it, or can he really rise to the occasion? Because remember, this is the budget before the budget next year, which will perhaps be most populist because it's closer to elections, and 2014 will just be a vote on account. Can Pranab Mukherjee really rise to the occasion?
Supriya, I certainly think it will be a lost one if he doesn't rise to the occasion, because a year from now, it will be presumably that much closer to the general elections of 2014, and that would have to be in the spring of 2014. So, in that sense, this is going to be much more opportune to do something serious in the budget, if possible. However, it is going to be a very challenging task because I think the global environment is not at all friendly. Thanks in part, I think, to the government's failure to take certain actions earlier, we are in a difficult fiscal situation and a difficult external situation, not to mention declining growth and still reasonably high inflation. So it's going to be a tough one.
All right, we're all keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that some of the seriousness does reflect in the budget. To Dr. Jalan, before I move on to Swaminathan Iyer for a quick word on the political compulsions, I wanted to share your view on this entire matter. Do you at one level believe that the opposition's stance, and a very, a very ominous one at that, the whole debate around the scams, the scandals which have put the UP on the back foot, do you think this budget can at any level do some sort of a damage control, or will political compulsions override the biggest fiscal exercise that Pranab Mukherjee is going to undertake?
That's a very important issue you have raised. You know, I have talked about it at great length, that it is unfortunate, the kind of political system that we have given place to with this anti-defection law, which what it does is that a small party, if you're a leader, you will have a small party of your own, and if you're a small party, you have veto power. And this is unfortunate. So we need political reform, and the issue that you have raised about political impediments, they are certainly there. But they are more in implementation than in announcements. This is a very important point also to remember. So the budget, I'm sure, would announce the right things. Whether they can do it really depends on the political will and political consensus.
That's a fair point indeed. The political will and the political consensus is just so much more important than just the intention that the government wants to bring about. But just to talk about intention, Swami, let me come to you. Do you think at one level this is the government's last chance to get the reforms that it intends to bring back on track? Because 2014, like we've just discussed, will perhaps be a budget for the election year. It will in fact be a voter account. 2013 will all be geared towards elections. So 2012 is his last chance. Do you think it will perhaps be able to drive the economic agenda that the government, perhaps in all its good intention, wants to?
I definitely think this is his last chance to put his financial house in order. That's an important thing. He understands it, Manmohan understands it. I think the two of them, if they carry out the message that, look, there is no state election, no other issue in the offing. This is the time and this is the right timing. Let us go full blast ahead. Let us do something really serious. Let us say there's a complete rollback of the original stimulus of 2008. That will give you this additional taxation. They have to do something big like saying, let us finally decontrol diesel, or do something about decontrolling or limiting the amount of subsidy on kerosene and LPG. I mean, these are the big things out there, and this is going to be, I think, the best window of opportunity. So I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm hoping that on these things they will go ahead with a really big announcement.
There's just so many people out there who are crossing their fingers just like you, Swami. But let's take the debate once again back to Bimal Jalan. Dr. Jalan, fiscal mathematics, or the budget arithmetic, is something that Pranab Mukherjee will perhaps be losing a lot of sleep over. His revenues are depleting, his expenditure is rising. We are in a situation where managing the budget arithmetic will be his biggest task.
No, I think that this is again an unsavory development in our system, that you have demands for expenditure, both at the state level, at the level of subsidies, and all over. And while very little activity in trying to make up for losses in your public sector, public sector supplies of a lot of essential products. So this is an important issue, and I don't see that much can be done just now. As far as I can see, much can be announced, yes. But whether it will be done, I don't know, and I hope something will happen. But very difficult issue you have raised, because there is no political consensus in terms of what you can reduce by way of expenditure and what you can expand by way of receipts. This is a problem, again a political one.
Let's go across to Swaminathan Iyer. Not such an optimist there, Swami. Revenues are depleting, expenditure is rising. Pranab Mukherjee is in a catch-22. He doesn't know what to do with it. We really are in a sorry state of affairs, aren't we?
If you have a tough budget, as I said, there are two aspects of how you produce a decent fiscal deficit in the next budget. A, that it's real, and B, some smoke and mirrors. On the reality, if you are able to raise your excise duty and service tax back from 10 to 12%, if you change the service tax having just a short negative list, if you say we're going to decontrol diesel, limit the amount of LPG, if you do all these things, then truly you can get a lot of the fisc back on track. Pranab Mukherjee, if you look at that long-term thing, he's supposed to come down to 4.1% of GDP in this year. He may not do that. Even if he brings it down to 4.6, it would be regarded as a big thing. But the question people will ask is, are you producing a serious figure or just smoke and mirrors? So we have to see. I mean, is it going to be a realistic thing? Because if you have very optimistic projections and assumptions, you can always produce a budget that looks okay. But you have to convince the skeptics. If you don't convince the skeptics, then you are really achieving nothing regarding the markets or regarding FDI investors.
All right, convince the skeptics is what Swaminathan Iyer says. Dr. Acharya, are you one of them? Are you a skeptic here? Because, every other investor that you speak to, forget about inflation at this stage, they are really worried about India's fiscal deficit, which they believe is really ballooning. Are you a skeptic here?
I'm afraid I am a skeptic on this. When the last budget was presented, a lot of people took heart from the fact that there was going to be almost no expenditure growth in that budget for this year that is about to end. And I was skeptical at that point that that kind of commitment would be kept, essentially because I felt that the subsidies on, particularly on energy, especially oil and food, would be significantly above what had been put in the budget documents for this year. And so, yes, I'm a skeptic. At the same time, I think there are ways around this skepticism if the government, or to meet the skepticism, if the government is serious. And I think those ways would be, for example, if you take the major subsidies, the one on petroleum products, he lays out, look, this is the subsidy which it has ballooned to in 2011-12. We absolutely need to bring it down in order to keep the fiscal situation manageable. And to do that, here is a roadmap. We are going to actually change, let's say, diesel prices from tomorrow by X amount, and there will be further steps. You cannot expect, a one-step rectification of our existing diesel subsidies, for example, but you can expect some serious attempt to bring them down. But I think if it's only a statement of intent in the budget on oil subsidies, then skepticism will be high. If action is taken, in a sense, at the time of the budget or the next day, then it's a different story.